Today, we're diving into the massive transformation plan from one of Japan's most established railway companies, Keisei Electric Railway. They're not just doing some minor upgrades. They are completely remaking the future of how people get to and from Tokyo's main international gateway, Narita Airport. This is a huge, multi-billion-dollar bet that's designed to set them up for the next 100 years.
So to really get what Keisei is doing, you have to start with this number, 800 billion yen. That's over $5 billion US. It's a truly massive investment, and it's all aimed at one thing: becoming the undisputed king of access to Narita Airport. A number this big tells you they are not messing around.
And a number that huge obviously begs the question. Keisei has been around for 115 years, connecting local towns and communities. So why on earth would they bet their entire future on just one airport? Well, as we're about to see, the answer goes way beyond just running trains.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at why they're making this 800 billion yen bet. Then we'll see how they recovered and got ready for it. After that, we'll get into the two main pillars of their strategy: the airport artery and the resilient foundation. And finally, we'll touch on their community goals and what this all means for their finances over the next century.
Okay, so what's the real reason behind this 800 billion yen plan? Well, this isn't some wild gamble. Keisei is reacting to something very real and very big: the massive government-backed expansion of Narita Airport itself.
Keisei's huge bet is a direct response to Narita's own incredible growth plans. The airport is set to nearly double its flights and more than double its passenger numbers. And just as important, the number of people working at the airport is also going to double. For Keisei, which is the main way to get there, this isn't just an opportunity, it's a tidal wave of demand that they absolutely have to prepare for.
Okay, but you can't just jump into a plan this massive from a standing start. Before making this huge bet, Keisei had to get its own house in order. They had a plan called the D1 plan, which was all about recovering from the pandemic and streamlining everything to build a solid launchpad for the future.
And wow, did they bounce back. After taking some big hits during the pandemic, their profits shot right back up in a classic V-shaped recovery, hitting 360 billion yen this year. That fast financial turnaround, thanks to travelers returning, gave them the cash and, more importantly, the confidence to kick off this next super ambitious phase.
And they weren't just sitting around waiting for the money to come back. They were making smart moves. They beefed up their real estate business, started early work on expanding their rail yards, and merged their different rail and bus companies to be more efficient. This was all about getting leaner and stronger for the giant task ahead.
So, with that strong foundation in place, Keisei rolled out the D2 plan. They're calling it a constitution transformation, which is a pretty bold term. It's built on two core pillars that are designed to cash in on Narita's growth. Let's dig into that first pillar, the airport artery.
So, pillar number one, this is the one you can actually see and touch. It's all about pouring huge amounts of money into the physical tracks, trains, and stations that connect Tokyo to the airport. They're reinforcing their position as the main artery to Japan's front door.
And check this out. Keisei's timing isn't a coincidence. It is locked in step with Narita's official schedule. New runways are coming online in 2028, and a massive new one terminal is set to open in the 2030s. Keisei isn't just hoping for more passengers. They're building for a future that's already on the calendar.
A huge part of this is a brand new express train launching in 2028. It's going to run from Oshiage Station, which is a major hub, directly to the airport. This opens up a whole new route, timed perfectly to serve the new runways and scoop up a whole new wave of travelers.
But look, a new train is great, but it's useless if the tracks can't handle it, right? That's why they're tackling massive engineering projects, making their rail yards bigger, fixing the huge bottleneck at Takasago Station, and even laying down a second track on a whole section of the line so more trains can run more often. It's a complete overhaul of the system.
All right, let's talk about Pillar 2. This is just as important. Even as they're doubling down on airport travel, they're also making their whole business much stronger and more resilient. This is about creating a ton of value away from the rails, so they're not completely at the mercy of the travel industry's ups and downs.
And here's what that looks like in practice. By 2030, the goal is for their real estate business to bring in almost as much profit as their entire transportation business. This basically turns it from a side gig into an equal partner, creating a much more balanced and stable company.
And they are absolutely putting their money where their mouth is. They're pumping 90 billion yen into real estate over just the next 3 years. For perspective, that's the biggest investment they have ever made in that sector in their entire history.
So, what are they doing with all that cash? They're funding huge new developments along their train lines, new shopping centers, apartment buildings. But what's really smart is they're building housing near Narita, specifically for all those new airport workers. They're not just moving people to work, they're building the communities where they'll live.
So, we've seen the trains, we've seen the real estate, but this plan is bigger than just concrete and steel. The D2 plan also includes a serious commitment to being a sustainable company in every sense of the word, for the environment, for society, and for their own employees. On the environmental side, they have some really specific goals. They're bringing in 90 new energy-efficient trains, rolling out about 180 electric buses and taxis. All of this is aimed at cutting their CO2 emissions by almost half by 2030, on their way to being completely carbon neutral by 2050. And it's not just about the planet, it's about the people who make it all happen. Just look at these numbers. A male parental leave rate of almost 66% is really high for Japan, and a 10-year retention rate over 90%? That tells you they have a stable, committed workforce, which is absolutely essential when you're trying to pull off a project this long and this complex. All right, let's pull this all together and look at the money. You might be wondering, how do you pay for all of this, these massive long-term investments, while still keeping your shareholders happy today?
Well, Keisei has laid out some very clear financial targets. They're shooting for a return on equity of 8% or more, keeping their debt manageable, and this is the big one for investors, they're promising to pay out 30% or more of their profits as dividends. It's basically a public promise of disciplined growth.
And that promise about dividends? They're showing you exactly what it means. The plan is to steadily increase the dividend they pay out each year through 2027. The message is clear. Even while we're building for the next century, we're going to take care of you, our investors, right now. It's a classic balancing act.
So in the end, this grand design from Keisei isn't just about trains and buildings. It's about weaving its own fate together with the fate of Narita Airport. By taking a 100-year view, Keisei is betting that as Tokyo's gateway to the world thrives, it can grow from being just a railway company into the absolute core of an entire economic region. It's a massive bet, and really, it's a bet on the future of Japan itself. Thanks for joining us.